Gina Dowd, adolescent psychotherapist, you were with us last night for another of our Parenting Your Teenager during COVID-19 workshops with Planet Youth. And I know that you found last night's discussions within the breakout rooms and in the General Assembly very stimulating and very insightful as well in terms of where parents are during COVID-19.
Yeah, I think so many parents were there last night and so many shared experiences, and yet there was a lot of questions. You know, what parents normally say, you know, am I doing this right? Or sometimes that other question, what am I doing wrong? And that was reflected in the questions, I think, that came back today.
Okay, and just to let our viewers know today what we're going to be covering in this interview, on screen you see 6 questions that Gina feels represent an amalgamation of a lot of questions that came last night and today. So your exact question that you asked may not be on the screen, but the spirit of it most certainly is there, and we will deal with that in our answers with Gina in a moment. As always, Gina likes to talk about structure and priorities, and on the screen there you can see 3 or 4 good pointers for parents in terms of helping you through this difficult time as a parent during COVID-19, and that will flavour her answers as well, as will gaining an understanding of your teenager. What kind of teenager are they, or what kind of teenagers are they at different times, in different moods, in different scenarios, etc. All of which should help you as a parent to be more effective during this and indeed all times. And other points that you'll be raising as well about how you negotiate your way through the challenges of COVID-19 and planning for the future as well. Another point, given that schools may well be back in September 2020. So that's just what we'll be covering, but it'll come up through the body of these questions in reality, Gina. And the first one I want to put to you is the question about how you support an inhibitive 14-year-old male. And I think we may have had 2 parents last night with this, more or less this exact question, if not 3. So perhaps you might address that question first of all, Gina.
I think it's important, firstly, to actually look at the situation that's happening before us at the minute. And it's like having a microscope on adolescents' behavior in terms of what they're doing, what we're doing. And we spoke about private time last night, and everybody's private time is intermingling and crossing over together. So now more than ever, we're very concerned by our adolescents' behavior. And some of this may have been cushioned before through the school routine, through activities they were involved in. The parents seem to be, I suppose, highlighting what's worrying them and what they're going to do. Every adolescent is different. Every home is different. So our response is always going to be different. And what works for one doesn't work for the other. So that's why I suppose I amalgamated the questions, because I'm giving a lot of generic answers. And the first thing I would say is we get consumed or fixated by the behavior. And we actually need to step back from that at the moment. It's not the behavior that we're going to find an answer to or that we're going to fix or change. What we need to get interested in is the adolescent that's there before us and our response to them. And what we're interested in is building an alliance with that adolescent, establishing a boundary, keeping a boundary, and communicating our support to them. Adolescents are struggling, as we know at the minute, to get motivated. And always when we think of motivation, there's 2 parts to it. There's extrinsic motivation, where the reward system that works very good for young kids, your star charts, your treats, all that go with it. And then there's intrinsic motivation, when we have that conversation and we hope that the adolescent gets it, it's trying to ignite their passion. And extrinsic motivation doesn't work so well for adolescents, because they're beyond the treats, they're beyond the seeing things. But we do want them to have a passion. So how do we do that? I would ask the parents that have sent in those questions, what's the norm for your adolescent? I'm going to guess that this behavior is not new. Perhaps you have always had quite a reluctant and inhibited, maybe a quiet adolescent. Maybe you've always had an adolescent that you've had to have the hand to their back pushing them to do things. And I would say to you, step back from a moment. You've tried lots of things. You've done very well in what you've offered. Now just pause for a minute. What do you think your adolescent is actually trying to communicate to you? They're normally not so open with parents where they're saying, I feel and I wonder and I think. By the time adolescents come into me, parents have tried so many methods, and they're saying to me, what should I be looking at? What should I be doing? And I usually get the whole family in together, and we get the lovely, unique opportunity to reframe the narrative. And I ask the adolescent what is happening for them, and then I'm able to ask the parents what's happening for them. And it's a lot clearer when we have that space together, and we have the benefit of this lovely, private, open space that's been facilitated by someone else. So here you are at home now, without many supports, at a loss, feeling frustrated, looking for a little bit of signposting. When you build an alliance with your adolescent, you actually stand beside them. We come into the world as parents with experience. With experience comes insight and comes foresight. And as parents, we usually want to make life a little bit easier. We know if you do the Leaving Cert, you have a better chance of getting to college, you have a better chance of doing well, whatever your chosen path is in life. And we want to make life easier, because as a parent, you love your adolescent and you want them to go out in the world full of confidence and having faith in themselves. If your adolescent is reluctant to get out of bed, if your adolescent is angry at all these interventions, what do you think they're trying to tell you? Often when we get to that stage of Leaving Cert or decision-making time, adolescents get afraid, and they get afraid about the next stage in their life. Now, they don't openly say that, I'm afraid, I'm worried, I'm concerned, because, sometimes it's not cool to say that. And remember, adolescence is synonymous with shame, and they carry a deep sense of shame. And many adolescents I meet are actually very worried about letting their parents down, because they do have a good relationship with them, because they do believe in them, and they see them as adults in the world who are making it. And going out in that world can be very, very frightening. So instead of naming it, they stay in bed. They say, I don't care. I'm not interested. And when an adolescent says, I don't care, they actually do care. They care an awful lot, but they get very, very lost. So stand beside your adolescent and help to reframe the narrative. You're trying to get them to see the world from your lens and your viewpoint. When you stand beside them, what you're looking at is life from their lens. And you're becoming curious and you're wondering, I wonder what's happening for you. Now, I know I'm using language here that's very therapy-based, and we don't tend to go home and say, I wonder and I feel and I'm curious. But what is happening for you as the parent? Are you frustrated? Are you upset? Why do you think they're not going to make it? Why are you so worried? Think about your adolescent. What are they actually like? What skill sets do they have? What joys do they bring to your life? What's the wonder of them? When we get lost and we're an adolescent and we're struggling, we tend to look at the world like this, and we can quickly point out what they can't do, what's not possible. No, I'm not going to get the points. And let's face it, we've got July the 29th now as this apparent date for the Leaving Cert, but we don't know how it's going to happen. So why wouldn't they be confused? Why wouldn't they be reluctant? Think of an adult yourself when you're trying to motivate yourself. Oh, I won't start that diet today. I'll wait till Monday. I won't do that run today. No, it's raining. And we all like to put things off, and it's very hard to get motivated. They're probably daunted. They probably don't have faith in themselves. They need you to have faith in them. So sometimes we just actually need to stop speaking. And we need to think about, what do I need from my adolescent? What do I think my adolescent needs from me? As parents, you listen to yourself sometimes and you think, I sound nuts, because you're repeating the same thing over and over again. Did you load the dishwasher? Did you do this? And you feel nuts, and then you can have a laugh sometimes and you're like, yeah, I am nuts. So sometimes it's okay to acknowledge to your adolescent, yeah, I'm a bit nuts today. you know. And you know what? My parents were nuts too, and chances are you're going to be nuts. And it's okay to acknowledge that and step back. But when I talk about boundaries, what I'm not talking about, no, it's not keeping stuff out. It's keeping stuff within your family. What's the one thing you can focus on today? Because someone mentioned, you know, in their contact, well, I actually got my adolescent to go for a walk. Maybe they've never been that interested in you know, in training, in PE, and any of that. Often what I hear from an adolescent is that they're holding a wound, and it could be something from national school. And often 5th, 6th classes is that very difficult time when adolescence is starting. And a parent may not be aware of it because it may be the tiniest thing, and the adolescent has never mentioned it. But they carry this narrative then, I'm no good. And then somebody mentioned about learning needs. And we know we all have the experience in school of having had a wonderful teacher, but we also have the experience of being highly shamed in school. And one teacher said something on just that bad day, and maybe I didn't have my breakfast, maybe the teacher didn't have their breakfast, but it sticks like mud. I'm no good. I'm crap. And they tend to carry that then into secondary school. And that becomes their whole narrative. So when I say reframe, you're offering them an alternative story. What do you want them to know about themselves? And then you're putting the dilemma again back on their lap. What do you want the story of your life to be about? You made it through the pandemic. And yes, I know we're highly academic in this country, and we place great, I suppose, store on education, and we've come so far in our history in educating ourselves, and we are the brightest, we're the best, you know, we have wonderful personalities as Irish people. But sometimes some adolescents need to take the creative route. And sometimes that is about pausing with the Leaving Cert. It supports them, it helps them, but it doesn't define them as a person. It doesn't. It does make life easier. But let's take our time and let's step back, and let's not worry about what Mary and Johnny are doing down the road. You know, it's not helpful. Somebody mentioned, you know, okay, the achievement I had today was getting up and getting dressed and going to work. Excellent. Brilliant. I certainly know when I was listening to parents talking about cooking and, you know, swapping tasks, I thought, that's not happening in my house. Okay. There's, I think, a donut maker. That was the height of it, you know. So stop trying to fix the behavior. Get interested in your adolescent. They're trying to communicate something with you. Try to be on the same, I suppose, the same page with them. The adolescents are anxious and they're insecure and they're triggered. And they are all online at the minute, and they are tuning in. And some teachers are teaching one way or some are doing another way. Give them the experience of a hunch you have about them. You know, they're intimidated by this grown-up world. Sometimes adolescents think that us adults have it all completely together. And I often tell them, you know, when they come in to see me, you know what? If you sat down with your parents and you sat down with some of your relatives and you heard some of the stories about them when they were young, you would be very shocked. Because, you know, they see us going to work and we look like we're together. You need to meet them at their growing developmental age. An adolescent is standing on the cliff and they're looking over the cliff and they're not sure if they have parachute or not. Your job is to stand beside them. Okay. And that's completely your job.
Okay, very good. Second question, Gina. Tips for understanding and supporting an adolescent male displaying anger.
Anger is a normal human feeling. We all have it. But anger gets a very bad press because when an adolescent is angry, their language is colourful. Oh, we got somewhat shocked, you know, and there's the hand gestures, there's the language to mother. And there's two ways to think about this. Underneath anger is always upset and panic, always. Think of yourself. Think of the keys example when you can't find your keys. I certainly know I've gone around the house like a lunatic looking for keys and they're under my nose. We get frustrated, we get panicked. What is your adolescent upset about, do you think? What's actually happening for them? And often when an adolescent is able to show you their anger, they're actually safe with you. because they go into school, they're with adults, and you know, you see them out, and we all, and I mentioned this in a previous talk, we would like our adolescents to be polite and respectful, and we get that pang of, oh, aren't they great, and especially when someone tells us. But when they come home, sometimes they're decompressing and they're letting off steam. So when you notice that, don't meet them in the anger. That's not the time to say you're disrespectful and you're this and you're that, because then everybody's meeting in that anxious place. Wait, something seems to be bothering you. I'm wondering if I can help out in some way. I'm wondering if we can look at this in a different way. The less you say, the more impact it's going to have. And you're offering them an invitation to come and to confide or to speak to you in some way. So it's always about invitations, but meet them where you feel they're at. You have intuition as a parent. You know when something's bothering them. They're not going to tell you everything. It's not their job. It's an adolescent's job to be highly secretive. And this may have got masked by friends before and all that went with it, because, you know, friends provide that cushion, and they can be online and they can do all that. You're now curious, there's something bothering them. You know, there's their business, we respect their privacy. There's your business as an adult, and then there's our business in this home. So it doesn't work well now if we're all fighting. So it's our business to hold the boundary and the safety. Offer them an invitation.
Very good. How to motivate a 17-year-old TY male? TY meaning transition year, of course.
What's motivation? I want you, Liam, to do what I want right now. And I want to motivate you.
Well, to my layman's view of the world, motivation is my business.
Yes. This is back to my business. It's very hard to motivate an adolescent. Get out of bed, get up, set your alarm. And sometimes instead of motivating them, we end up enabling them. You know, so, and we're all guilty of it.
If I can just develop that for a moment. In the world of sport, I hear about people who are great motivators. I personally find that a bit hollow, because I think it's a bit of a trick, and a short-term trick.
Yes.
And that ultimately what motivates me, even in team sport, is me, the individual. It's something within me, for people close to me perhaps. And there's a lot of talk in the modern world about motivating people. That's my little segue over. You're the professional here. I'm only the Schrodvalia psychotherapist.
I'm not that amazing. I can't motivate people. What I do is I get interested in what's happening for somebody. I'm meeting them, like I said there earlier, at their growing age. What's happening for them? What is their passion? And it may be the smallest thing that you get curious about. It may be a YouTube video. It may be a singer. Okay. And you see their face light up, and it's like, and I might be looking at the music on who, what, but explore with them their internal world. We know an adolescent mind is very, very busy. They're going through an awful lot of firsts, and at the minute they're having to settle for a lot of seconds. Everything is a second. They're finishing secondary school, there's no debs. They're finishing national school, there's no, you know, community around that, there's no endings. So they're kind of in limbo. So if I'm saying I want to motivate them, I'm going to park that for a minute. I'm interested in where they see themselves. I'm interested in what kind of ideas they have, what kind of passions. It doesn't matter how off the wall. We all adapt ideas as adolescents, and we grow and we change and we swap them. It's like sometimes our taste in music, you know, it changes. And I mentioned that there's the directional adolescent, and they do exist. And we know them since national school. They are sure what they wanted to do. This is where they're going to go, and they go there. And then there's the inhibitive and there's the impulsive. And adolescents tend to be a mixture of all three. And when they're in a very painful place, they tend to be either highly inhibitive or highly impulsive. And that's when they absolutely need support, because this head is in chaos. I can, I don't, I will, I won't. So rather than motivate them, get interested, because at the end of the day, they're going out in the world. They need to be able to self-soothe, get interested in what they want to do, and find their passion. That's more important.
And so is it in terms of creating the environment, creating the support, creating the place where they can do what they want to do and develop their own motivations effectively.
Whatever it is, we all have different ideas. Like I said in the beginning, we're all individuals. And it's very important our individual ideas come to the fore. They may be amazing. Maybe your adolescent is the next inventor. Maybe they want to join the circus. And where parents show extreme courage, and it takes a lot, they know their adolescent is bright. You know, the adolescent that gets the school report could try harder, could do better, hard to motivate. And that adolescence is like, no, I don't think so. And the parent's like, if you just did 1 more hour of homework, you just. The parent that shows courage is the one that steps back from that mantra. What do you think you might be interested in? What do you think might be a fun job? Where do you see yourself in a year? Well, I see myself doing this. Then get interested in that story. You're taking them seriously rather than pushing them to where you think they should go. None of us like to be told what to do, least of all adolescents.
Excellent. How to get adolescents to help with tasks. I guess that is probably around the house or around the yard or something like that, or around the farm perhaps. Maybe not, who knows?
Yes, and again, your individual adolescent, what were they like before this pandemic? Were you always encouraging them? When we get to when we have kids, right? You do this now and I'll give you a reward. That extrinsic support there. And I'll give you this and I'll get you that, you know. I'll time you and you can do all these little tricks that are really funny.
How quick you go to the shop.
Yes, yeah. How quick can you type?
Still work. Does that trick still work with young people, does it?
Yes.
What time you go to the shop? Okay.
Yes. Up till about 6.
I live about 2 or 3 kilometers from town though, so I couldn't do it from here probably.
And of course they're changing. So it becomes that art of consultation and negotiation with them. They want you to take them seriously. They don't want to be treated like a kid anymore. And sometimes parents are looking at them going, well, I won't treat you like a kid when you start behaving like, you know, an adolescent. So this is where the art of negotiation comes in. I would like some support in the house. We all live in this. Again, this, when we talk about their business, my business, our business, it is our business to keep this house tidy. It is our business to try and eat together, to try and work together. I'm interested in this happening. And yes, you might need to be very directional in that, and the dishes might need to stay in the sink for a day until it happens, until it becomes so uncomfortable. You know, we tend to do things when we're at the height of our frustration. We pull out the Wi-Fi, we do this, we do that. It's better to have that consultation. I have noticed this has happened. Okay, tomorrow I think it's going to be better for all of us if we actually don't have access to a Wi-Fi. Tomorrow I think it'd be better if we cook pasta. If you want them to leave home, you want them to be able to cook. You really do. And you're the only person that's going to teach them that. They're not going to teach them that in the supermarket anywhere else. You're the only person responsible. What would you like them to become interested in? Their diet, their nutrition. And sometimes it's some of these sideways conversations that you have that they're not so direct. Oh yeah, I fancy that now, but I don't think I should eat that this evening because I was trying to look at this, or there's cholesterol in the family, or there, you know, it's referring to, I suppose, what I call third-party conversations. And sometimes you also need to work with them as if they were, you know, your niece or nephew who'd come from another country. So, you know, sometimes when people come for the summer holidays or they come to visit and you parent in a different way, you don't give out to them. So sometimes we need to almost do it remotely. How would I speak to this person if they were my niece or nephew? Would I be a little bit kinder? Would I be a bit more understanding? How would I do it? And we manage our expectations a little bit differently. We know they're a member of the family. We know we have our rules and our norms and our expectations. But if one way isn't working, I'm a big fan of changing it. Because, you know, repeating the same thing and expecting a different result, we only end up frustrated. So try a different approach. Trust your style. Trust trying something new. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. Get creative as a parent, and don't be afraid to, because you're supporting them to become creative later on in their life.
Okay. You touched on some of this already, I know, about
Mm.
supporting a disengaged adolescent with examinations.
I suppose I was curious about this adolescent. Is this behavior new? What is actually happening? And there's one of many
So
things.
can I just stop you there? Is there a danger of creating kind of a perfect past of 6 weeks ago that is the cause of good old days bad memory anyway? But is
Yes.
there that danger that we're now already sort of, whatever you want to call it, idealizing this past that existed before COVID-19? Are we playing that trick on ourselves?
There's part of that, Liam, and there's also part of the heightened anxiety. Everything is in our face at the minute. And we're possibly seeing things because we're spending more time with our adolescent that maybe we let slide before and maybe we weren't so panicked about. Now, in my experience in working with adolescents, coming up to this time of the year is very triggering because there's decisions about what am I going to do. I don't know any person 18, 19, that knows what they want to do with their life. In fact, we usually have to reach our 30s or early 40s before we actually know what we want to do with our life. And that's really, really important to remember. Everything is a stepping stone up to that. Everything is an exploration. So again, it's the how do I get them motivated? How do I find out what they're interested in? They don't want to do the leaving cert. Oh my goodness. They don't want to get out of bed. Oh my goodness, right? You know, that would send me in a panic. It would. But let me step sideways from this and go, what is happening that is this adolescent? What is new in this behavior, but what is pre-existing? And sometimes we need to go outside our own skill set as parents, and we need to consult with someone else. I certainly can't be a therapist to my children. I can't. I would be seeking the guidance of someone else whom they can have a different conversation with. And often the therapist, the neighbor, the friend, whoever it is, you find they tell them something because they can be a little bit more objective. And again, they don't have that fear of being judged. And they don't have the shame attached to it. Most adolescents will say to me, my parents expect me to be this, this, and this. And their view is sometimes a little bit distorted because their parents will come in and say, I just want them to be happy. I don't mind what they do. I do not mind. And none of us as parents want to see our adolescents still hanging around at home in their 40s. We want them to be wherever they are in their life, doing whatever they want to do. And it really boils down to, if you ask yourself honestly as a parent, you want them to be happy. So I would say take the foot off the panic button at the minute. They are less motivated because they've less pressures on them because they can put things off. What is actually happening? Get underneath some of the behavior, be it the anger, be it the staying in bed. Get underneath it and get curious. But again, stay focused. You know, we mentioned it in one of the first talks, and all the parents said it last night. Tasks are important, concentration time, fun time, family time. They've all mentioned it. These are important boundaries in your house, and you need to hold to them while maybe biting your tongue and while maybe saying, you know, sweetheart, and how are you? You know, it's doing it in a way that supports you in your parenting role and your style.
Okay, very good. Final question, Gina. Tips for supporting a young adolescent with online learning. It's kind of a first cousin of the last question, but a different variation.
Okay, online learning, and I think what I recall about that question was this adolescent is presenting with some learning needs and is reluctant to engage in the online learning and is reluctant to consider the extra support that was being provided in school. You know, we can all think of aspects of our adolescence and schooling, and no matter how bright, how able, how academic, whatever your learning style was, there was always certain experiences that were shame-filled. And many adolescents say to me, I feel stupid. And they feel even more stupid when they have had a particular diagnosis or when they have to engage in learning support, because we want to be the same as everyone else. We absolutely do. And if, as adults, if we think about it, we can all go back to a time that was difficult in school with a particular subject, with a particular teacher, even with sport. I'm sure you've seen that yourself over the years, Liam. I can't do that. I'm not able to do it. And they get fixated on what they can't do. I would say for this little fella, take it easy. Teachers are giving that advice that it's not homeschooling. We didn't sign up for it. You know, even teachers who are at home teaching their own children, it's different for them. Take the foot up. What does this little lad need at the minute? Maybe he needs to be away from the pressure of school. You know, they're not going to collapse in their learning style. We have to trust that teachers are going to do what they need to do when kids go back to school, and they're going to support and they're going to advocate for them. It's not about kids catching up, but how do you want him to stay online? So if the online is a source of frustration, push it away. Get out the pencils, get out the pens. I certainly know we did a whole house design here the last day, and it was a great piece of learning. I found out what kind of house my son wants to build at the moment. Although, you know, he said, you know, it could be a different one now, you know, in a year or two. I said, fair enough. You want their mind to be creative. Yes, learning is important. I'm a big advocate of education. But if it's causing stress and this little fella is getting upset, there's something bothering him about his learning. There's something he's holding about himself, that he doesn't think maybe he's the best or the brightest. Something's bothering him. Be more curious about that, because as a parent, that's where you can really nurture and support. And that's
Very
what
good.
they remember.
Okay, to be of an age again where I think I can build a new house every year on the same site.
Isn't it great? And that's the passion that we talked about earlier, that you want to ignite in them, that sense of wonder and achievement.
Or maybe not even ignite, but not to suppress, perhaps. Maybe it's there all along. Just to,
yes. And I think we know schools are amazing and they're great, but there's a huge workload, and we want to do it alongside their passions.
Okay, so just to run through again, I think we've touched on some of these. As parents, understanding your expectations. You've been saying all the way through this series not to expect too much of yourself. It's a difficult time. Give yourself a break as well.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the different types of teenagers, of course, and routines, gentle routines. You can't always be this wonderful parent you'd love to be, and that's okay too. I think that's a key message from you, isn't it?
We rarely are. We have ideals, all of us do, and we need to have them about how we should parent. But what's important is always the relationship. The relationship with yourself, the relationship with your adolescent. Is it kind? Is it supportive? Is it good? Can you negotiate with yourself to take a day off from whatever you're doing? Can you take ownership of your feelings? Because sometimes we let the thinking take over, and as we know, we can have a lot of faulty thinking, and we can have a lot of old thinking that dictates how we need to be in our life. Pay attention to your feelings and say, how do these need support? Plan, and I know I've left the last slide there, planning for September 2020. We need to be in good shape. We'll have a lot of reintegration to do. Our new norm has changed, so plan how you want September to look for you and for your adolescents. And you want it to look okay. Not amazing, not fabulous, but okay.
Good enough is good enough.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, Gina, as always, fascinating. Thank you very much for joining us. And this will be made available to parents and other people who wish to access Planet Youth. And there will be more of these as well in the future. And we have a back catalogue building up now as well. So,
yes.
Gina Dowd, adolescent psychotherapist, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Liam.